Hello, everyone. We meet again with me, Lenny Marlina. It's nice to meet you. Today, I'm going to talk about learning success, especially what happens in our brains when we learn something new. Um, do you know what happens in our brains when we learn something new? Okay, let's talk about it. How do we go from zero understanding to be able to use a concept or skill in our daily lives? I'm going to introduce you to a three steps process through which learning happens. This is not the whole exhaustive picture, but it gives the big idea and it offers a framework that we can use to build strategies for how to make our brains work better for us in a classroom. When it comes to learning something new, the process of what happens in our brains is a lot like the process of a building a library. Say I'm building my own private library, and someone gives me a book about car repair. The first step I'm gonna take is to figure out what I'm holding, to look at the back cover, to read the table contents, to skim the chapters to see what this book is about. The step of reading the book for the first time is what's called encoding. The step of reading the book for the first time is what's called encoding. Okay. Encoding means forming an impression of something, taking sensory input and forming a representation, or what's called a memory trace in the brain. A memory trace in the brain. Okay. It happens in our short term memory and it's happening all the time. Every new experience we have, every new impression that's made on us builds a new memory trace. And because we are forming memory traces all the time, not every memory trace gets kept. Not everything gets moved from short term to long term memory. Think of my library. Anyone who's ever collected anything knows that once people know you are collecting, they start giving you things all the time. And as a collector, it's your job to decide what to keep and what to give away. Once my friends and family know that I'm building my library, they're gonna start giving me books left, right, and center, and I'm gonna have to figure out what's useful and what may I'm gonna give back. The way I do that is by figuring out how each new book or each new memory trace helps me in my daily life and how it fits with what's already in my library. As someone who drives cars, knowing how to do things like check tire pressure or change the oil would be helpful. So, having a book about how to do those things in my library is going to be useful to me. And to make it as useful as possible, I'm gonna want to put it somewhere that makes sense where I can find it easily in the future. And if I need it, I'll find it. The step of figuring out where in my library this book belongs is what's called consolidation. Okay. The first step is encoding. The second one is consolidation. Consolidation reorganize and stabilize memory traces, gives them meaning, and makes connections to past experiences and to other knowledge already stored in long-term memory. To put that another way, consolidation takes the new information we've taken in, connects it with other ideas that we already have to what we already know, drawing on our prior knowledge. For my library, it means taking the book that I've just decided to keep on car repair and recognizing that it probably belongs over there and with my old driver's manual that I have from high school. And maybe next to the books of maps that I've got ready for my next car trip. It also means separating the book from what it isn't, say from my collection of cookbooks or my books on art and photography. If step one was reading the book, step two is taking the book and finding a good home. Step three then is finding the book later on using my library. Okay? If step one was reading the book, step two is taking the book and finding a good home. Step three then is finding the book later on using my library. Say, I wake up on one morning and the car won't start. If all I had is a huge building full of books built at random, it would be impossible to find that car repair manual when I need it. Even if I had taken the time to organize my library, if that book is in the dark, dusty corner that I haven't visited in years, I'm not necessarily gonna know that I have it, let alone where it is the morning that my car won't turn on. Then, the last step in the learning process is what's called retrieval, finding and using memories. It turns out that the more regularly we retrieve information, the more regularly we circulate the books in our libraries, the faster we'll be able to find the information in the future. And the more deeply we'll understand it. When you think about it, that makes sense. The more frequently I visit each section in my library, the better I'm gonna be able to know what books are on the shelf. Likewise, the more regularly we recall and use information we have learned, the better we'll be able to find it and able in the future. Okay. So the basic learning process, encoding or taking in new encoding, okay, or taking in new information, and then uh, consolidating or organizing it and making connections with what we already know and retrieving, okay, or using information in practice. I repeat again. So the basic learning process consists of three processes. The first one is called encoding or taking in new information. The second one, consolidating or organizing it and making connection with what we already know. And the third one, retrieving or using information in practice. Understanding how this process works can give us some practical steps to take in learning and more deeply by letting us choose strategies that work with our brains and what our brains are already wired to be doing. Okay? Ladies and gentlemen, please remember the basic learning process: encoding, taking the information, consolidating, organizing it, and making connections with what we already know. And the last one, retrieving or using information in practice. Well, I think that's all about the basic learning process, how the brain works, and I hope you enjoy it. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much for watching and listening. See you soon.